Alright guys, welcome back to another path, or I keep saying it wrong, Project Diablo 2 video. So I'm here with a new build. I don't know if anyone's come up with this yet. I'm sure they have. It's not like it's a secret or anything, but this is a Sanctuary build. So based on my last video with the Dragon Den, I really like the charge playstyle for Paladin. I really don't like casting spells, and I like just hitting enemies, and just feels a lot better to me. So I wanted to make another build that was like melee, but didn't have all the pitfalls of the Dragon Den, which is mainly that you don't really have much survivability, and you also run into issues with immunities. So after a long time of testing things out, I've arrived at this build, and I'm pretty sure it's going to get nerfed, just like Dragon Den did, just because of how strong it is. So let's go over the stat allocation first. Very simple. You're maxing Sanctuary. So in case you didn't know, in this mod, Sanctuary, it hits everything, not just undead. In the base game, it didn't hit everything. And I'm pretty sure it didn't add any magic damage to your attack either. So anyway, it has some pretty weak synergies. It's only 8%, but it adds up. So you can see it's right now doing around 5.8k. If you compare that to Holy Bolt, that's higher than Holy Bolt can get. Mind you, that's shotgun, so it hits 3 times, so it's a little hard to compare it. But also, because we're using charge, we're AoE hitting things constantly over and over again, so it's pretty much comparable. So that's a lot of damage that's going to be added to your main attack. You're going to max Might, Blessed Aim, and Thorns. All these are in the offensive aura tree. You can see them here. So Thorns, Blessed Aim, Might. You have to get these two to get down to Sanctuary. Defensive tree, I just put 1 in everything that you need kind of here. I go over this in every Paladin video. You need Vigor to move around. It's just quality of life. Cleansing, you need to just get rid of curses, or poison. Especially like if you're in a Bale run, when the Act 2 guys come out, you just always put on cleansing, and like the mega poisons or whatever they're called, they go away really quick. Meditation's good, you get mana after each kill. Redemption is fine if you want to toggle it if you run out of mana. And sometimes you're going to need salve, so no reason not to do that. It's all just utility. As for combat skills, similar to other videos, you want to get the Joust ability, which is like, the jump move. Really helpful. It's more of a utility thing to get over ledges, and to also make your Mercenary come to you, because whenever you teleport, anything you have summoned will come to you. So like Necro summons your Mercenary. Along the way, you're going to pick up Zeal, which you're going to use for bosses and single target stuff. And then next, you want to go all the way down here to get Holy Shield. Holy Shield is like overpowered as hell, and basically it makes it so that you don't really have to worry about getting block chance or hit recovery, stuff like that. So 1 point in that, 1 point in the rest of these. You are going to be using charge as your main ability. You don't need to max it though, because as you can see, the damage barely goes up per level, and none of the other synergies other than Might are linked to it. So that's what's nice about Sanctuary build, is that as you're gonna get Might anyways to get max Sanctuary damage, and then you end up having another synergy. So that's just really good, because most of the time you run out of points. So your charge is going to be a lot better than the Dragon Den build, where you're not maxing Might, so that does come into effect. That's it for the skills. Pretty self-explanatory. As for stats, like everything, just get as much strength as you need. Get around 200 dex to make sure your block chance is, perfect when you have Holy Shield on, so 75%. And then just max vitality. That's it. Other important, I'll go over resistances and all that later. So let's look at the items, because this took a very long time to boil it down, because there's a lot of options, way more options than other builds. But this is what I ultimately came at. It's the most well-rounded, like multi-purpose setup. You're gonna have a ton of magic fine, not a ton, but a reasonable amount. I'll just pull up the stats here. So I'm at 130. So most like pure damage builds, they're gonna have close to no magic fine. So we actually get to squeeze some in here, and that's really helpful. Now, of course, endgame, this type of build is for doing maps. When you make a map, you always re-roll it so that you get, you know, magic fine. So this adds 138. That's okay, but you can always re-roll it to be higher. As long as you're above 200 magic fine when you're farming whatever you're farming, then that's acceptable. Obviously, if you're trying to find a ton of uniques set items, you're gonna want more than that. But with the speed of this clear speed, you're going for high runes, so it doesn't really matter that much. But it is nice to have. So that's always something in a build I try to make sure that you have magic fine for, because if you don't, you always feel like you're gimped, and it's like, well, I want to find items, right? Like that's the whole point. But I mean, if you can't complete the build without doing that, then it's really boring. So that's good. This build has magic fine. The only stuff I'm wearing that gives magic fine specifically is the Nagel ring. So the Nagel ring could be swapped out for a Bolkathos. This is the best like DPS ring for this build. Gives you a ton of survivability and one to all skills. Now, of course, you can get a Wisp, and that would be meeting halfway because Wisp has 12% magic fine, so you're getting a little bit. One thing I did find with the Wisp build and with Paladin with charge is that when you summon the Spirit of the Barbs or Wolverine, whichever one it is, yeah, you're gonna get like 1,000 extra damage, but that thing dies all the time, even when it's like battle ordered, because the way you charge, you're always surrounded by everything, and it just gets killed. So it's like honestly not worth the trouble, I don't think. Maybe if you're in group play and you have a healer or something, then it would be good, but for solo, I would just say stick with the Nagel ring or the Bulk Athos if you want to do it. You don't care about the extra magic fine. The only thing about Nagel ring that is good is the mana after each kill. That helps out. Other ring is a Ravenfrost. Obviously, you can swap this out for a Volcathos as soon as you can get cannot be frozen on your boots, but that's going to take a while, and it's going to be pretty expensive on Gore Riders, so you're going to probably be using a Ravenfrost for a very long time. The stats on this thing don't really matter, to be honest. You just want cannot be frozen. And honestly, if you can find a rare ring that has like lifesteal, mana steal, maybe some all res, maybe some magic fine, and if you can slam cannot be frozen into that, then that's like even better than a Ravenfrost. So go ahead and use one of those. The next thing here I'm gonna talk about is I guess the boots. So this is a physical damage build. It's like half and half. So you're going to be doing like 50% magic damage and 50% physical damage, which is like amazing because you're never going to run into anything that's immune to both of those two things. It just doesn't exist in the game. You'll find all kinds of magic immune stuff in the higher maps, but because you're doing a lot of physical damage, it won't matter, and vice versa for anything that's physical immune. So we do want to get, a reasonable amount of Deadly Strike and Crushing Blow, because those are the two stats that really make physical damage builds do a lot of damage. As you probably know, Deadly Strike is a crit chance, so it's like it doubles your damage. And Crushing Blow is like it reduces the target's max health. Like you just do like a big chunk of the max health of the target, so that's also really good. Next is, let's look at like the armor here. So, well, actually, there's some options for the boots. You could do War Travs. War Travs, actually, this little line of text here that says 15 to 25 damage, that adds up to being about like 5 to 600 damage once everything's calculated. So it is quite a bit of damage. You will miss out on a little bit of the Crushing Blow and Deadly Strike. So you see if you take them off, it goes to 35-25. So instead of every other attack, now it's like 1 in every 3 attacks. So you lose some consistency on that, but you're going to get some magic fine. So you can use those if you like. The other option for a budget option is the Goblin Toe. I think I have those somewhere in here. Let's just find a page. Yeah, Goblin Toe. So Goblin Toe are really cheap. No one uses them for anything. They're just vendor trash. But if you look closely, they have 25% crushing blows and enhanced damage. So if you don't have Gore Riders, you can just find some Goblin Toes. They're really cheap. Go ahead, use those. They're like almost the same amount of damage at the end of the day. Yeah, so that's it for the boots. The belt. Belt slot again, there's a lot of options you can use in terms of pure DPS. It comes between the coil here, which it's giving you attack speed, deadly strike, and the lifesteal, which is kind of helpful, and also mana after each kill is really useful. So this one I prefer because we already do a lot of magic damage on hit. It's more well-rounded to go here and pick up the physical damage. The other option, of course, is arachnids. So it's 1 to all skills. Everything else doesn't matter. So 5.8k. So it adds about 300 damage to your sanctuary. So that's another option. I prefer the coil. It's also way cheaper than an arachnids. So there's that. But yeah, if you need survivability or a budget option, of course you could use a gold wrap. They're amazing. They have attack speed and just a ton of magic fine. Other options are string of ears, pretty much anything. The belt really isn't a big impact here. There are the boots. They kind of just they help to round out the build by giving it crushing blows and deadly strike. It all adds up like little by little. So next is the gloves. So these, you might look at these and go, what the heck, why are you even using these? These are trash. So they're actually not trash. I'll go into that. Obvious stats that are good are the attack speed, and then mana stolen per hit, which is the only item that gives us any mana back other than the mana after kill. So this is helpful for just utility. You'd never have to really switch to use Redemption Ore to get your mana back, and it just goes a long way for quality of life while you're playing. Important stat here though is the 180% damage to undead. Now this is an interesting stat which I only found out recently. It's number one, not reflected in the character sheet. So if you look here at your damage, I'll take Sanctuary off so you can see my physical damage. It's not much, right? Like I'm only doing 2700. So that damage, the way that works, and this is a theme with a lot of the gear I'm wearing, so it's going to have either damage to undead or damage to demons. Pretty much everything in the game, other than a few things that are like unclassified, and they're usually like beasts or animals, I guess, like the crushers and the quill rats. Those are not undead or demons, but most things in this game are going to fall into one of those categories. And the way that this is calculated is that it's multiplied as so 180% is multiplying whatever it is by 1.8. So let's say you do 10,000 damage, or make it even easier. Let's say you do 1,000 damage and you multiply it by 1.8. Like you're adding 800 damage. So it's 80% more damage. So when you look at it like that, it's actually huge because it's almost doubling your damage at the end of the calculation. Of course, it only does that to undead, but doesn't really matter. So that again is never reflected in the character sheet. And if we look at my damage right now, the 2700, if we just look at what we have on the gloves, and we're doing 4,860. So against undead, we're doing pretty much double damage just from the gloves. So that's a really important stat for physical damage. It doesn't apply to anything else, like your magic damage or fire or anything like that. This is just pure physical damage. So that's really good. Also, it gives you life. It's got some defense. So those are good gloves. There are some options for gloves as well. You could use Soul Drainers. Soul Drainers have a really interesting mod this season. It's minus 10% physical resistance. So this is you're gonna do a bit more damage, like 10% more damage basically. The things that like it'll get rid of their armor. Steel Rend is another option. Expensive, but it's 80%. So if you compare the Steel Rends with these against Undead, these are like more than twice the damage if you exclude everything else. So always take a look at that because it's a sneaky little stat there that you really don't notice, but it adds up a long way. So Steel Rends are okay. Of course, Chance Guards. I love these too. They're fantastic. Tons of magic fine. You could switch these out and you're not going to see a huge difference in your DPS, but you're going to get a ton of magic fine. So those are another budget option. Next is the armor. So the armor, there's actually two options. Well, not really. These are strict. The Chains of Honor is like the best piece you can get for this slot. It just has everything we want. So first of all, 2-to-all skills. That's going to increase our sanctuary damage, which ends up being quite a lot. Sorry. We just talked about this. 200% damage to demons and 100% to undead. I just went over that, so that's a huge amount of physical damage increase for both those classes of enemies. You get some lifesteal, which is good. You get all resist, which is really nice, and magic fine. Like it's just a great item. There really isn't anything better. Budget option actually exists for this, and it's it's actually very close to the same stats. So principal is Ral Pull, which is like nothing. It's like you can make this super early on in the season. You get the same amount of skills. You're still getting damage to demons and undead. It's a lot less, but it's still there. And you get a bit of resistances. You don't get the magic fine. You don't get the all res. But it's super cheap. So principal is what I would use if you're just starting out. And yeah, that's that for the armor. Really easy to just pick Chains of Honor here because it's just so good for everything we do. Next is the Helm. Let's talk about that. So I tested a whole bunch of different helms because there's a lot of options here. And I think the best helm will be if you can get a 1-to-all skills in this thing with a slam and then puzzle box it for 2 sockets. I think that'll be the very best. Of course, there's comparable things to that, like the Veil of Steel. You could, of course, get 1-to-all skills in that as well and put some enhanced damage jewels in there, but you're going to be missing out on the Crushing Blow and the Deadly Strike. That's really why this item is like, I wouldn't stray from it. It might take a while to get a 3-socketed one, or the one I just explained, and in the meantime you could probably use like a Steel Shade, which is really good, or a Veil of Steel, or even a Shaco. But the G-Face is just like, you need that 35% Crushing Blow. If I take this off, you'll see that like those 2 stats in the corner there that really matter for physical damage, they're just gone. So this one's insane. Obviously I have Plug Y installed, so I have like the best jewels, but you don't need to have perfect jewels in here. Anything with ED, probably over 35% would be fine. And max damage is obviously the best. So yeah, there's that. Let's look at the amulet. So Seraph's Hymn, another like, so again, this amulet's a lot better than like it appears to be, specifically because it has the damage to demons and undead. So this is like no-brainer best amulet. for this build because it does physical damage increase, and it also gives you 2 to all skills, which is going to increase your sanctuary damage. So this thing's nuts. I wouldn't worry about the defensive aura stat line on there. It doesn't matter. Just try to get 80/80 or as close to it as you can. And obviously, if you slam this for +1 to all skills, that would be insane. So this one's a no-brainer. You could use a High Lords if you really wanted to, but it's just worse. The Deadly Strike ends up not being anywhere nearly as useful as the bonus damage to demons and undead, and you don't need the attack speed. I'll bring up the attack speed frames here. I took a photo of it. So this is using my current weapon, and you know, we have 40% increased attack speed. So the result is down here. So you're getting 9 frames per attack. So that's right here on the table. To get to the next one, you need like a fuck ton of increased attack speed, so it's just not even worth going for. And of course, this is only possible because we have a beast rune word on our mercenary, so keep that in mind. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. So that's that for the amulet. Really no other options. Next is the shield. So I settled with exile, which is an odd one. When I was looking through all the items that were, potential candidates. I really thought it was going to be the Alma Negra because it has 200% enhanced damage and 2 to all skills. So those are like extremely valuable for this build. But it doesn't really have much else. Of course, you could slam 4 sockets into this. And then you could, socket it with either Magic Find or All Resist, and that would be totally fine. But so that is an option if you don't want to go for the Exile, because it's probably way more expensive than a 4-socketed Alma Negra. But Exile itself is only Vex Ohm, and the amount of defense you get out of this thing and the utility is just unmatched. So, like, amplify damage, really good, especially against bosses. It also breaks things that are physical immune. Not all the time, but just some of them, because it's not that strong. But that's really good. The Defiance Aura is nuts. Like, your chance to getting hit is just like 40% right now. I take it off and switch on the Alma Negra, and it goes to 80%. So, like, it's literally, it halves the chance that you're going to get hit by something, which is insane. Like, especially in this mod, because of how the way it works with like defense being way more important than in vanilla Diablo. Like, nuts. Also, okay, so 2 to offensive auras. That's basically 2 to all skills for us because we just use Sanctuary Aura. So, like, most people or most builds that use Exile, they never use an offensive aura, so it's always a wasted stat buff. For this build, it's literally perfect. Yeah, and then it has freeze target, which is very useful. Max resistances here. You get all res. You get magic find, and of course, classic Exile. You always want to do it in an ethereal one so that you get like a ton of armor. Really good weapon. Of course, you could use. I tried using a Phoenix. Phoenix is good, but the damage increase is like really not worth it because you're already doing quite a bit of damage. You're way better off having the defense part of this and the magic find, I think. So yeah, Alma Negra if you want to use the discount one. Herald of Zakram is fine too, but not really not much better. It's slightly worse than the Exile. So. And last but not least, the weapon. So this took a while to figure out. I tried pretty much every rune word in this position. The reason the Redeemer is the best is, again, it comes back to all these hidden stats. So let's just go down from the top down. So it's 2 to Paladin skills, so that's going to give you, 2 to Sanctuary. It also has 4 to Sanctuary itself, so it's 6 to all skills. So there's no comparison. There's no other item that gets anywhere close to as many skill points in the weapon slot. So if you're just going to focus on getting your Sanctuary up, this is the item. But also, it adds a whole bunch of damage. So if you look at the 4th line where it says damage plus 120. So this is an interesting thing because this is not reflected in the calculation of your sheet, your character sheet. So what that means, according to Amazon Basin, which is like the place to go, it adds 120 damage to your min and max. So to the bottom, to the top end, and the low end. So that would be calculated before all the percent bonuses get applied. So it says it does 160 to 208. It technically does, 160 plus 120, which would be 280 to 328. So that's a huge difference. If you compare that to something like a grief, which is, its main thing is it adds the damage. This is attached to the item itself, so it's already reflected in the item's stat line. So the grief, you can see, does, considerably more damage on the sheet. But in fact, it's actually around the same damage because it's just not reflected in the sheet. Also, this does damage to demons, which is insane. 250 is like nuts. You're doing with this build like 450 to demons. Well, no, even more, like upwards of 500, 5 times the damage to demons. Yeah, insane. And so what you would ideally want to do with this is slam +1 to all skills and also puzzle box it and throw a Ja rune in there. So Ja rune gives you ignores target defense. Basically this is a quality of life thing. So when you're charging around and hitting stuff, you'll miss a lot or the enemy will block. If you have ignore target's defense, they can't block or dodge, or you won't miss. Still miss 5% of the time. And your attack rating is just irrelevant, doesn't matter. So ignores target defense is like super useful mod. And if you do get 2 sockets, which you can get with the puzzle, there's other stuff you could throw in here to do enhanced damage. So yeah, there are some options if you don't want to get the Redeemer, although I think it will be the cheapest of the other options. So Grief is good. There's nothing wrong with doing a Grief. It's a little bit less, holy damage by like almost 2,000 less, but you're getting all the stuff from Grief, which is good. Death is another option. I don't like it though. It does put you up to 100% crushing blow, and you're pretty much critting every time. But the damage is lower itself, and also you don't really get anything else out of this that's useful. I actually prefer the Grief over the Death. It's just way more consistent when you're fighting mobs for whatever reason. So yeah, Grief's an option. There are some budget options. Ones you wouldn't even think of. So Silence. This is an interesting rune word. Super cheap to make. It's a Vex. That's it. Or Vexist. So 2 to all skills. Damage to undead. You get a ton of all resist and magic fine. It's got a whole bunch of stats that are useful. Very cheap to make. It is the lowest damage output though out of them all, but you're still doing pretty good damage. So this is a budget option. Don't be afraid to make that. Switch this back here. Doom is another option. So Doom has a lot of utility attached to it. Damage wise, it's pretty much almost the same. It's slightly less than the Redeemer in terms of like the sheet damage, but remember the Redeemer has all that hidden stuff that increases the damage a lot. Main thing that's good about Doom is you get the Holy Freeze aura. So basically your survivability goes up a lot because things are just like you're slowing everything around you. You also still get 2 to all skills on this thing, and it does have a lot of deadly strikes. So Doom's another option if you have one or if you can find one for cheap. I did try Voice of Reason. It ended up not being very good. Yeah, so Redeemer, best scepter for this build. Let's look at the Mercenary because I already mentioned it. You do want a Beast on the Mercenary. It's going to give you attack speed, which is kind of one of the issues with the Redeemer is it doesn't have any built-in attack speed, so it's really slow. But level 8 Fanaticism Aura will put you up to that second to the 9 attack speed ticks per second, so it's a really good item on your Merc. Rest of the Merc gear is self-explanatory. You just want ethereal defensive shit like Shaft Stop, Vamp Gaze, just so he stays alive. And of course he's going to give you Might Aura as well, which is going to boost your damage. Now when you're in town like this, the auras from your dude, they don't apply to you until you get in combat. So let's check that out. Skill wise, you're going to want to have your teleport move handy so that you can teleport. Right, super useful because the Merc will come with you. And now, of course, you can see the auras are on me. So the damage is going to be considerably higher than before. Zeal you're going to want because you're going to be zealing down bosses. And then, of course, charge. So charge is like the main thing you're going to use. So you can see you're pretty much going to one-shot anything in hell. Oh, I don't even have Sanctuary on. Yeah, so even without Sanctuary on, it's a lot of damage. So now with Sanctuary, you'll see it's very high damage. So yeah, those are the skills you're going to want to use. Of course, you're going to want to have Salvation handy in case you run into something with Conviction. So you want to have that to be able to swap. You want Cleansing as well. And then Sanctuary, just as your main one. Like you're usually going to want Sanctuary on. And because we have the Mana Steal and the Mana After Kill, unless you're against stuff that does like Mana Burn, you're really not going to run out of mana. So yeah, regular mobs in hell are a joke. So let's check out. I made this is the Cathedral Light. So this is like meant for group content. So this was like the ultimate test here. So on the swap, you want to have again Call to Arms and probably a Herald of Zakram, so that you get bonus skills when you're doing it. This is going to make your Barb survive because he's going to get a ton of health. It's also going to help you out. And the one-to-all skills is going to boost your damage. So yeah, I already went in here a bit and killed some stuff. But this is, these are the hardest mobs in the game, pretty much, for solo content, I'd say, other than like Ubers, obviously. But Ubers is like, you're not farming Ubers, you're making a specific build to deal with Ubers. It's not really a comparison, but like look at this. This guy's immune to physical, doesn't matter. These glooms are immune to magic, doesn't matter. They're all dying super quick. We have a ton of lifesteal. We're really sturdy, so we're not going to be having that much issue surviving. Yeah. So I was quite surprised how well this handles the mobs in here because they have a ton of health and they have a ton of immunities. But it seems like this build can just handle it, which is why I think it'll be nerfed because the devs really want to kind of get away from letting people play solo. I think they've just been kind of pushing that, but yeah, it does get hairy. Like, not gonna lie, when you come up against like huge rooms, it takes a while for you to kill stuff, so you are going to be taking hits from stuff, especially the ranged units. These guys that charge are like always a problem. But you can see with the amount of lifesteal we have, around 14, we're pretty much healing up to full all the time. And yeah. So this is a tough map. So I just wanted to show that, showcase it a bit here, that it does handle well. And I'm not even using the best gear. I'm using the Nagel Ring and the Raven Frost. So it's not like I had to change the build around to be able to do this. It just works. So yeah, I think that explains that. Let's jump into a regular map. So I made this one, just a rare tier 1 map, and let's see how it fares here. So very similar to the dragon build in terms of clear speed. It is going to be slightly slower in these types of maps. Only reason that is the tick damage on our sanctuary doesn't do much. It's about 1,000. When you're doing dual dream or dual dragon or whatever, your AoE tick radial damage is actually hitting for a lot, and it usually like kills stuff outright. You're not going to be killing stuff just standing around. It takes quite a few ticks, as you can see. But you have zero risk of dying with this build. You don't have to, swap what you're using. You don't have to throw conviction on or change anything up while you're in here. You can just charge. And if it gets too surrounded by stuff, you can always zeal. You can do the telly zeal. That's like a good combo. So you zeal until there's nothing left, then you telly, then you zeal some more. Very similar clear speeds. And yeah, so the issue with the Dragon Den was that you could only do certain maps. The maps that had a lot of fire immunes, you just avoided because it was not something you could do. And this build, seems to be able to handle whatever you throw at it. Even these hollow ones, they're immune to magic, but it doesn't matter to us because we just, we have a lot of crushing blows and a lot of like physical damage. But yeah, the clear speed is good. Obviously, Dragon Den's faster on these specific maps, but it's a trade-off for the versatility. So I think I'm going to be making this build on ladder this season because it just seems to be just more well-rounded and honestly cheaper. The only expensive thing in this build is really the Chains of Honor, so you need a burr, and everything else is under 2 HR everything. So in terms of last thing is the charms. Actually, I didn't go over that, so it should be pretty straightforward. Offensive auras. The second stat here, faster hit recovery, doesn't matter. Get whatever you like. Health or movement speed, whatever. Annie's, like in Torch, obviously. I have a Gahid's for the Magic Find, and then just all res. So you'll note these are all perfect, and as I take them off, my all resist is still quite high. So you really don't need to get perfect ones. You just need to get, whatever you can afford. So it looks like that's the cutoff for fire and cold, but yeah, so pretty cheap build. That's all I got to say about it. Try it out. I'm sure that the Redeemer is going to go up in value, so pick one up quick. Maybe these gloves even too. I don't know. Anyways, let me know what you think. I don't have a name for this build yet, so if you guys Think of a name, maybe comment that, and if it's cool, we'll put it in there. But right now, I'm just gonna call it like Paladin, because it's actually kind of like you're just a Paladin. Honestly, like there's nothing weird about like you're just using Sanctuary. You're using Exile, which is like the Paladin rune word. You're using this thing, it's like a Paladin weapon. I don't know. It's just a really wholesome, well-rounded build. So, anyways, take care.